pregnant wife was left bleeding on the stairs by millionaire and mistress. Then she woke up in a castle. Blood pooled on the marble steps, a cold testament to betrayal. Elena Morales, pregnant, alone, and clinging to the last thread of consciousness, could hardly recognize her once happy life. Mere minutes before, she'd trusted her millionaire husband, Oliver Ashford, with her world. Now his mistress, Vanessa Hathaway, sneered from above, while Elena's strength ebbed away. Outside, rain lashed the grand estate's windows, as if nature herself were raging at the cruel scene. Then darkness swept over Elena. She never saw the ambulance arrive, only the hateful smirk on Oliver's face. And when she finally opened her eyes, she woke in a castle. Elena Morales grew up in a modest neighborhood in Montserrat, a small coastal region known for its white sand beaches and rolling azure waves. Her parents, Francisco and Beatriz Morales, poured all their love into raising her. They taught her to reach for the stars, even when their own resources were limited. She was a bright child, curious and creative, always painting or reading about distant lands and ancient castles. In fact, her fascination with castles came from stories her mother told, fairy tales filled with gallant knights and heroines who conquered adversity. In her late teens, Elena earned a scholarship to a prestigious university in London. There her path crossed with Oliver Ashford, a young businessman who already had a reputation for brilliance. His company, Ashford Global Innovations, was rapidly attracting investments. Whispers circulated that he had once attended private tech retreats with Bill Gates and rubbed elbows with Jeff Bezos at exclusive fundraisers. Despite his wealth and the aura of power he exuded, Oliver possessed a charm that was surprisingly unassuming, or so Elena thought. Their courtship unfolded beneath glittering chandeliers at society galas, amid philanthropic events at art museums, and on private yachts. Elena, initially cautious, found herself drawn in by Oliver's apparent sincerity. He presented himself as a driven man who valued loyalty and compassion, someone who believed in her dreams of becoming an artist. They bonded over shared interests in philanthropy, especially in building schools in underprivileged areas. Oliver frequently mentioned how he wanted to use his money to do good, an idea that resonated with Elena's upbringing and her parents' ideals. When Oliver proposed on a snow-dusted balcony in Switzerland, Elena said yes without hesitation. Their wedding made headlines. Magazines marveled at Elena's beauty in a vintage lace gown and Oliver's magnetic presence. The press called it the fairy tale union, two souls from starkly different worlds, merging in harmonious matrimony. Elena thought she'd stepped into one of her mother's fairy tales. She couldn't imagine a life outside Oliver's protective embrace. Love blinded her to the tensions brewing beneath the surface, and she disregarded rumors about Oliver's business deals that skirted ethical lines. She also overlooked the hushed gossip, hinting that Oliver had a taste for dangerous liaisons. Over the next year, Elena basked in the novelty of her new role. She continued painting, immersing herself in vibrant colors in her personal studio while Oliver expanded his corporate empire. At times, he showered her with thoughtful gifts, custom-made paintbrushes from Japan, a rare Renaissance sketch, and private museum tours. She believed these were signs of true devotion. She was convinced Oliver understood her at her core, and then came the joyful day she learned she was pregnant. Oliver's initial reaction was a dizzying blend of shock and elation. He held Elena close, whispered about how this child would carry the Ashford legacy, and vowed to be the best father imaginable. For a moment, Elena felt the world had aligned perfectly. She pictured evenings spent in their library, reading stories to their baby, weekends at the beach, reminiscent of her own childhood on Montserrat's shores, and grandparents on both sides doting with unconditional love. Yet something shifted in Oliver soon after the pregnancy announcement. The once tender man was now often absent, burying himself in late-night meetings and clandestine phone calls. Elena chalked it up to anxiety about fatherhood, a common enough fear that many men faced. She reassured herself that his passion for business required extraordinary sacrifices. But the seed of doubt was planted. By the time her baby bump began to show, Oliver's affections had grown sporadic. He would lavish her with a grand gesture, like a new painting studio or an extravagant piece of jewelry, only to vanish the following weekend without explanation. Still, Elena remained hopeful. She believed that once the baby arrived, Oliver's priorities would reorder themselves. On her end, every flutter of life inside her belly reaffirmed her determination to create a warm, loving home. After all, wasn't this how fairy tales tested their heroines? A temporary storm before the final triumph, but as she would soon discover, not all storms pass gently. Some tear entire worlds apart, leaving devastation in their wake. 8 months into her pregnancy, Elena was at the height of anticipation. She had drawn whimsical paintings of animals for the nursery and meticulously sorted baby clothes by color. The unborn child, a baby girl they planned to name Isabella, was Elena's anchor in the chaos of Oliver's increasingly erratic schedule. One stormy evening, Oliver invited a circle of business partners and close associates to a dinner party at the Ashford estate. The lavish property, an opulent mansion perched atop rolling green hills, resembled something out of a modern monarchy. Crystal chandeliers sparkled against marble floors, and the sound of classical violin music echoed throughout the grand corridors. Elena, determined to be the gracious hostess, wore a flowing emerald gown that accentuated her pregnancy. Though she felt tired, she wanted to show Oliver's guests her genuine warmth. She greeted everyone with a polite smile, ignoring the stabs of back pain and the sense of unease gnawing at her gut. That evening, for the first time, she caught sight of Vanessa Hathaway. Vanessa was a striking woman with dark, silky hair cascading to her shoulders and dressed in a figure-hugging black dress. Oliver introduced her as a key business consultant from one of his overseas ventures. Elena could barely put a finger on what unsettled her more, Vanessa's brazen confidence or the fleeting, intimate glance she exchanged with Oliver. Something in that moment felt like a silent scream. Vanessa's eyes sized Elena up, and a knowing smirk curled on her lips. During dinner, Vanessa sat close to Oliver, too close for Elena's comfort, occasionally brushing her hand against his. Elena's insides twisted with jealousy, though she tried to maintain her composure. She reminded herself of Oliver's vows, tried to recall how he had once planned to build a safe, loving family with her. She caught her mother's gaze from across the room. Francisco and Beatriz had flown in to support their daughter at this important party. Her mother's eyes were tinged with concern, as if she too sensed the air crackling with tension. But there was nothing to be done in the middle of a formal gathering. Between courses, Oliver and Vanessa disappeared, claiming they needed to discuss a crucial investment. Elena, forced to entertain the remaining guests, felt her heart thunder in her chest. She excused herself to the hallway, hoping to find Oliver and demand an explanation. Instead, she found them in the library. Through the crack of the slightly ajar door, she witnessed a scene that crushed her spirit. Oliver leaning in too close, whispering words that made Vanessa laugh in a slow, seductive way. She placed a hand on his chest, their eyes locked in a moment that was far too intimate, far too familiar. Elena backed away, trying to steady her breathing. The ache in her back intensified, and a dull pain spread across her abdomen. She clutched the banister for support, a wave of dizziness washing over her. As she attempted to collect herself, footsteps approached from behind. She spun around to see Vanessa, face to face, a smug grin painting her sharp features. "My dear Elena," Vanessa purred, "is everything all right? You look rather pale." Elena's voice caught in her throat. Before she could respond, Oliver appeared, face flushed with embarrassment or anger, she couldn't tell which. He stared at Elena, his gaze as cold as the marble floors under their feet. "Don't make a scene," he hissed. "We'll talk later." "But Oliver," she began, only to be cut off. "You heard me, Elena." His tone left no room for argument. Vanessa smirked triumphantly as she looped her arm through Oliver's and sauntered back toward the dining room. Alone in the hallway, Elena pressed a trembling hand against her belly. The baby stirred inside her, a reminder that she had to stay strong, but the foundation of her life was shifting beneath her feet, and she stood on the brink of an abyss she had never known existed. Hours later, the party finally wound down. Guests began to leave, complimenting Elena on her grace and hospitality. She forced smiles, exchanging pleasantries through clenched teeth. Once the door closed behind the last attendee, silence descended upon the estate, heavy and foreboding. Elena found Oliver in the grand foyer, removing his cufflinks with a weary sigh. She could see the conflict in his eyes, or was it annoyance? She stepped forward, swallowing the knot of fear in her throat. "Oliver, what's going on between you and Vanessa?" Her voice cracked with desperation. "I know what I saw. This can't be just business." He regarded her with the cool detachment of a stranger. "You're imagining things," he said flatly. "You're tired." "It's the pregnancy, Elena. You need rest." Her anger flared. "Don't patronize me. I saw how you looked at her, how she touched you." "If there's something," she paused, the lump in her throat making it hard to continue, "if there's something happening, we can work through it. But you have to be honest." Oliver sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "You want the truth." His sudden calmness sent a chill through her. "Vanessa and I, we have an understanding, a mutual benefit arrangement. It's not something you'd understand, Elena. And right now, she's more than a consultant. She's helping me secure investments that will triple our fortune. Don't ruin everything with your hysterics." Tears blurred Elena's vision. She placed a protective hand on her belly, summoning courage. "She's more than a consultant," Elena repeated softly. "Is she your mistress?" Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Oliver gave a slight, dismissive shrug. The minimal movement cut deeper than any admission of guilt could have. "Go to bed," he whispered, voice devoid of emotion. "We'll continue this conversation when you're calmer." Before Elena could speak again, Vanessa materialized at the top of the sweeping staircase, an almost ghostly figure in the dim light. She leaned over the banister, her tone dripping with condescension. "Oliver, darling, are you coming upstairs? We have important matters to finalize." She cast Elena a withering glance. "Oh, Elena, you're still up. Don't you think you should be resting? Stress isn't good for the baby." At that, Elena's world cracked. Rage and heartbreak collided in her chest. She tore her gaze from Vanessa and locked eyes with Oliver. "Is this how you treat your wife, the mother of your child?" Oliver said nothing. Instead, he turned to follow Vanessa up the stairs. Something in Elena snapped. She lunged to grab his arm, determined to demand respect, to fight for the family she believed they could still be. But the moment her fingers brushed his sleeve, Vanessa twisted around. In a flash, she shoved Elena backward. Elena stumbled. Everything happened in a sickening slow motion. Her foot missed a step. Her body lurched, and pain exploded in her abdomen as she crashed down onto the marble floor. A scream tore from her lips. White-hot agony radiated through her belly. Dizzy with pain, Elena looked up to see Oliver and Vanessa standing at the top of the staircase, their faces pale. Blood spread beneath Elena, dark and terrifying against the white marble. She tried to speak, but her voice was drowned by a sob. She reached out, a helpless plea, but Oliver didn't move. Vanessa clutched his arm, her expression caught between shock and fear. Time blurred. Elena's consciousness flickered, caught between the overwhelming desire to save her baby and the realization that she had been truly, devastatingly betrayed. The last images she saw before darkness claimed her were Oliver's face, a mixture of horror and reluctance, and the sight of Vanessa's hand still gripping him, as though she refused to let him descend to help his bleeding wife. When Elena opened her eyes, she was no longer on the cold marble steps. Instead, she lay in a bed draped with velvet curtains, in a room illuminated by delicate, flickering candlelight. She blinked rapidly, her mind foggy. Groaning softly, she tried to lift her head. Every inch of her body ached, though the most pressing discomfort was the dull throb in her abdomen. Panic seized her as she remembered the blood on the stairs. Her baby. Was Isabella still alive? Desperately, she reached for her belly. Relief flooded her when she felt movement, faint but present. Tears welled in her eyes. Her child was fighting to survive. But where was she? A door creaked open, and in stepped an older woman with kind eyes and hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple black dress, reminiscent of a caretaker or housekeeper from a bygone era. Behind her stood a short man with an impeccable suit and a gentle face. "Rest easy, madam," the woman said softly, setting a tray on the bedside table. "You're safe here. My name is Rosemary, and this is Dr. Chilton. He's been watching over you." Elena's confusion only grew. Where am I?" Rosemary exchanged a glance with Dr. Chilton. He moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on Elena's wrist to check her pulse. "You're at Dorchester Castle," he said. "We've been caring for you after you were brought in a critical state." Dorchester Castle? Elena struggled to process. She had never heard of any place by that name, at least not in her circle. The last memory she had was lying on the stairs, Oliver standing above her. Then the blackness. Rosemary gently brushed aside Elena's hair. "You lost quite a bit of blood, but the baby is stable for now. You need rest, good nourishment, and, of course, minimal stress." Elena's thoughts swirled. None of this made sense. "Who brought me here?" she asked, voice trembling. "Was it Oliver?" Both Rosemary and Dr. Chilton looked uneasy. Finally, Rosemary said, "We don't know who exactly. An ambulance was called, apparently by a staff member at your estate, who found you, but you never arrived at a public hospital. Instead, a private arrangement was made to transfer you here, Doctor." Chilton sighed. "All I can tell you is that you're safe. The castle belongs to a benefactor who remains discreet. Once you've recovered a bit, we can discuss more details." Elena's mind flashed through a catalogue of possibilities. A benefactor? Why would a stranger take such an interest in her well-being? She recalled Oliver's massive business connections. Could this be some secret ally stepping in? Or was this part of some twisted new plan by Oliver and Vanessa? She rubbed her temples, the pain in her head intensifying. She allowed them to help her drink a warm broth that Rosemary had prepared. The comforting heat slid down her throat, temporarily easing her anxiety. Though she had an avalanche of questions, her body's exhaustion won out. Within minutes, she drifted back to a fitful sleep, haunted by half-formed nightmares of Vanessa's triumphant smirk and Oliver's retreating back. Over the next few days, Elena regained fragments of her strength. She learned that Dorchester Castle was an ancient estate nestled deep in the English countryside, far from the city's bustle. High stone walls, weathered battlements, and ornate gardens made it look like a scene from her childhood fairy tales, but there was no sign of a knight in shining armor. Instead, a small, dedicated staff moved silently through halls lined with portraits of forgotten lords and ladies. Elena's attempts to learn more about the castle and her benefactor were met with polite evasions. Rosemary repeated that the owner wished to remain anonymous. "Doctor." Chilton assured her that all medical care and living costs were taken care of, with no strings attached. The staff behaved as if Elena were a cherished guest, yet the place felt eerie and isolated. Each day, Elena would walk through the labyrinth of corridors, exploring a world of hidden alcoves, dusty tapestries, and locked rooms. The footfalls of staff members echoed lightly, but she rarely encountered anyone else. She found an extensive library, where she discovered old tomes about the castle's centuries-old history, battles fought, royal visits, and elaborate banquets. But nowhere did she find any mention of its current owner. Without Oliver's presence, Elena's anguish about her shattered marriage only deepened. She had no phone, no laptop, no way to reach the outside world. She questioned Rosemary about contacting her parents, but the caretaker suggested it might be best to wait until Elena was fully recovered. The secrecy gnawed at her, but whenever she pressed too hard, she was met with a calm yet firm refusal. Late one night, unable to sleep, Elena roamed the halls. A soft light glowed from beneath a door at the far end of the corridor. She approached quietly, her heart pounding. Curiosity overrode caution, and she gently turned the knob. Inside, she found a small study lit by a table lamp. A man sat behind an ornate desk, flipping through documents. She couldn't see his face at first, but the few wrinkles at the corners of his eyes spoke of age, not youth. His suit was tailored, suggesting wealth or high status. At her entrance, he looked up. Their gazes locked. There was a calm intensity in his eyes, and Elena sensed he had been waiting for her. He motioned for her to step inside and quietly closed the folder in front of him. "You must be Elena Morales," he said in a low, measured voice. "Please sit." She hesitated, then took a seat across the desk. "I'm sorry to intrude," she began, "but I need answers. I've been told someone brought me here after I was injured. Are you the benefactor?" He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "My name is Henry Dorchester. This castle has been in my family for generations. Recently, I've taken a philanthropic interest, you might say, in certain matters." Elena's heart thudded. You're the one paying for my medical treatment." He leaned back in his leather chair. "Yes, I received word of your situation through a network of individuals who keep tabs on affairs that might require discretion. Given my resources, I intervened. I realize this must be disconcerting, but I assure you, you were close to death when you arrived." Tears prickled Elena's eyes. "Why would you help me? We've never met." Henry paused. "Let's say I have an interest in certain injustices. Your circumstances triggered that interest. I also know your husband's reputation. Oliver Ashford, correct?" Elena tensed. "Then you know more than you're saying. Why not let me go to a regular hospital or contact my family?" "Because your husband would find you instantly if you did that," Henry said, the hardness in his tone startling her. "And from what I've gathered, that might not be safe for you or your unborn child. There are influential players around Oliver. Vanessa Hathaway is not just a mistress, she has her own powerful connections. Right now, you're better off hidden." Elena's thoughts swirled. She hated the notion of living in secrecy, yet she couldn't deny Oliver's betrayal and Vanessa's cruelty. The memory of being pushed, of lying helpless and bleeding, still haunted her. Still, she missed her parents desperately. "Please," she whispered, tears falling, "my parents, Francisco and Beatriz, they must be worried, sick. Couldn't I at least send them a message?" Henry gave a sympathetic nod. "Arrangements can be made, but trust me when I say, for your own safety, you need time to recover, to plan your next steps. Once you leave this place, the real fight begins. I can protect you here for as long as you wish." And so, Elena found herself caught in a world of secrets and hidden alliances. Part of her wanted to return and face Oliver, to reclaim her life and her dignity. Another part of her, still wounded and terrified, felt the lure of Henry's offer to remain safe, at least until Isabella was born. She had no idea that this was only the beginning of revelations that would change her life forever. In the weeks following her arrival at Dorchester Castle, Elena Morales regained physical strength but wrestled with deep emotional turmoil. Each night, she awoke from nightmares of Oliver's cold stare and Vanessa's malevolent grin, her heart pounding in the silent corridors. Although Rosemary provided constant, gentle care, fresh meals, soft bedding, and daily checkups with Dr. Chilton, Elena felt like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. Despite the castle's grandeur and Henry Dorchester's measured kindness, she could not shake off the ache of betrayal. She often retreated to a small art studio he had prepared for her, painting vivid images of storm-lashed coastlines and solitary figures gazing from castle windows. Every brushstroke became a channel for her anguish and her longing to protect her unborn daughter, Isabella. Elena gradually learned scraps about Henry's secret philanthropy, though he remained evasive about his motives. One evening, as thunder rolled across the moors, she confronted the fear growing inside her. She could not hide forever. Standing on a stone balcony, she felt the wind whip against her cheeks as Henry appeared quietly at her side, warning that Oliver was spinning false stories of her disappearance and searching for her with unsettling determination. Torn between dread and resolve, Elena vowed to defend her name and her child against Oliver's lies. If she could find a way to gather proof of his guilt, she would see justice done. Bolts of lightning illuminated the sky, reflecting the fierceness in her gaze. Henry promised he would stand by her, but cautioned that confronting Oliver meant inviting a storm as powerful as the one raging outside. That night, Elena lay awake, Isabella's gentle kicks anchoring her resolve. She whispered into the dark that neither fear nor cruelty would dictate their future again. On a brisk morning 2 weeks later, Elena nearly jumped out of her skin when Rosemary knocked on her chamber door and announced she had a visitor. Visitors were rare in Dorchester Castle, and Elena braced herself, wondering if it could be someone Oliver sent. To her astonishment, the visitor was her cousin, Miguel Morales, an investigative journalist who had traveled extensively, unraveling corruption scandals and exposing high-profile criminals. "Elena!" he exclaimed, rushing to her side. He gently hugged her, minding her pregnant belly. "Dios mio, we were so worried about you. Your parents were frantic, relief mingled with curiosity." "Miguel, how did you find me?" Miguel shot a glance at Henry, who stood in the corner, arms folded. "I got a cryptic message from a man named Henry Dorchester, saying you were here, under his protection. Took some convincing, but I promise to keep your location confidential." Henry inclined his head politely. "Miguel has a reputation for getting to the bottom of sensitive matters. I thought he could help. After all, to clear Elena's name and secure her safety, we need more than just good intentions. We need someone who can uncover the truth." Miguel's eyes flashed with determination. "I've been digging around since the night you disappeared. Oliver is spinning a story to the media, claiming you left voluntarily. He's hinted you were mentally unstable due to pregnancy complications. There are statements, allegedly from doctors, saying you'd been suffering from severe depression. Oliver is also working with a powerful PR firm to manage the narrative." Elena's heart raced with anger. "That's a lie. Oliver and Vanessa are the reason I was hurt. They left me bleeding on those stairs." Miguel placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "I believe you, Prima. But in the court of public opinion, we need more than words. We need evidence." Elena inhaled sharply. "There must be something. The security cameras at the mansion, they must have captured what happened." Henry nodded. "That's a lead. If the cameras were on, the footage could be our strongest asset." But hacking into Oliver's estate won't be easy. His security system is top tier, likely upgraded by major tech firms that once collaborated with him. We also know Vanessa's no stranger to orchestrating cover-ups. Miguel smiled wryly. Luckily, I have some old connections in the cybersecurity world. If we can get someone on the inside or intercept the footage, maybe we can prove Oliver's story is a lie. But be warned, Henry added, stepping forward. The moment Oliver senses we're after that footage, he'll tighten his defenses. You'll become a bigger target. Elena stood tall, feeling Isabella move within her. I won't live in fear anymore. Whatever it takes, let's do it. A plan formed that morning. Miguel would make contact with his cybersecurity allies and strategize how to retrieve the footage or any other incriminating data. Meanwhile, Henry would use his discreet network to protect Elena's location and gather further intel. They also decided to bring Elena's parents to the castle under the strictest secrecy so she could finally see them and assure them she was safe. Elena felt a sense of purpose reawakening in her. She'd spent the last few weeks healing physically and emotionally, but now she was ready to act. For the first time since waking in this mysterious castle, she felt hope that justice might be possible. And she was no longer alone in the fight. 3 days later, Elena paced anxiously in the candlelit foyer of Dorchester Castle. Rosemary and 2 staff members had left earlier in the day to fetch her parents. Henry had arranged for an unmarked car to bring them discreetly, evading Oliver's private investigators who were reportedly monitoring all travel in and out of the Morales home. Elena's heart leapt when the massive double doors swung open. There, standing with wary eyes and trembling hands, were Francisco and Beatriz Morales. The moment they saw Elena, tears streaked down their faces, and they rushed to embrace her. Elena wept in her mother's arms, the relief of being reunited flooding her with overwhelming emotion. "My child," Beatriz whispered, pressing her hands gently against Elena's belly. "I was so afraid. We heard all sorts of terrible rumors." "But you're safe here." Elena squeezed her mother's hands. "Yes, Mama, I'm safe. Thanks to Mr. Dorchester's kindness and Miguel's determination." Francisco's face was ashen. "We tried to reach you to call Oliver, but he said nothing of value. He insisted you had left, that you needed time alone. None of it made sense. Your mother and I have barely slept." Henry emerged quietly. "Senor and Senora Morales, welcome to Dorchester Castle. Please, be at ease here. We understand this is all very sudden, but rest assured, your daughter and her baby are receiving the best care." Francisco bowed his head gratefully. "We can never repay your kindness." Henry responded with a polite smile and gestured for them to move deeper into the foyer. "For now, let's ensure you get settled. You'll have your own suite. Elena needs all the family support she can get." Once the initial wave of relief subsided, the family gathered in a cozy drawing room. Elena recounted, through choked sobs and trembling words, the events that led to her fateful fall, Oliver's affair with Vanessa, the confrontation on the stairs, how she woke up at Dorchester Castle. Beatrice's eyes burned with fury at the mention of Oliver's betrayal, while Francisco, usually quiet and composed, clenched his fists in helpless anger. "We must go to the police," Francisco said, voice tight with emotion. Miguel, standing by the fireplace, cleared his throat. "I've already reached out to certain law enforcement contacts. The problem is, Oliver's influence runs deep. He's donated significant sums to local campaigns and has corporate ties that could quash any investigation. That's why we need hard evidence footage, documents, anything that can force the authorities to act." Beatrice shook her head, tears clinging to her lashes. "I never trusted that man fully, but Elena believed in him so strongly. She deserved better." Elena felt a pang of guilt. "I was naive, Mama. He showed me a side of himself that felt so real, but now I see I was blinded by love. or what I thought was love. Francisco set a hand on her shoulder. No more regrets, mija. The priority now is to protect you and your baby. They all agreed to stand behind Elena, whatever the cost. Henry explained that the operation to retrieve the security footage from the Ashford estate was set to begin soon. Miguel's cybersecurity contact, an old friend named Louisa Chen, would attempt a remote infiltration. If that failed, they'd consider a more dangerous approach, an in-person extraction. As the night wore on, Elena felt an odd mix of fear and relief. She was terrified of confronting Oliver again, worried about what he and Vanessa might do if cornered. Yet she was relieved that her parents, Henry and Miguel, believed her unconditionally. She wasn't waging this battle alone. Together, they were forging a path toward justice, for Elena's sake and for the unborn child who deserved a future free from betrayal and brutality. Before the family parted ways for the night, Francisco placed a kiss on Elena's forehead. We are with you, Elena, always. Whatever Oliver has done, we'll make sure he faces the consequences. And soon you'll hold your daughter in your arms, surrounded by love. Elena nodded, eyes brimming with gratitude. Yes, Papa, that's all I want, to keep Isabella safe and to live without fear. Late the following evening, Elena found Miguel hunched over a laptop in the castle's small study, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. Henry and Louisa Chen were there too, deep in conversation. Cables ran across the floor, connecting various devices. The tension was palpable. Louisa, a skilled cybersecurity expert with short, cropped hair, had a calm, analytical demeanor. She explained her plan in concise terms. Oliver's estate has a robust security system, motion sensors, encrypted cameras, and a fortress-like firewall. But every system has a vulnerability. We believe we can exploit a backdoor in the software through which their security logs are uploaded to an off-site server. If we can access that server, we might extract any archived footage from the night Elena was injured. Miguel rubbed his temples. We've tried twice already. The firewall's shutting us out. Henry's eyes narrowed. Time is of the essence. If Oliver catches even a hint that we're breaching his system, he might destroy the evidence. Elena hovered by the door, anxiety twisting her stomach. Is there any other way? Louisa paused. A direct infiltration. If we had a device physically inside the estate connected to the network, we could bypass the external firewalls and copy the footage. But that's infinitely riskier. If we're caught. Elena knew what was at stake. She also knew that if they didn't retrieve that footage, Oliver could continue discrediting her. She felt Isabella shift in her womb, as though urging her onward. What if I'm the one who goes in, she said softly. The others looked at her in shock. Henry was the first to protest. You're due any day now. It's far too dangerous, Miguel added. No way, Elena. We can't risk your safety. You or the baby. Louisa cleared her throat. We need someone inside, but it doesn't have to be Elena. Elena shook her head, determination blazing. Who else can get into Oliver's office without raising suspicion? I know that estate better than anyone here. There's a servant's passage near the library that leads straight to Oliver's private study. I used it often when I wanted to bring him coffee during late-night work sessions. If anyone else tries to sneak in, they'll trip a dozen alarms. Henry exchanged glances with Miguel and Louisa. Even if you manage to plant a device inside the network, how do you intend to escape without getting caught? A wave of apprehension rushed through Elena, yet she forced herself to remain composed. Oliver might not expect me to walk right back in. He thinks I'm scared and helpless. I can use that to our advantage. Her voice wavered. I know it's risky, but if it means securing justice, I have to try. They spent the next few hours hashing out a plan. It would require precise timing, a moment when Oliver was away, ensuring Vanessa wouldn't be patrolling the estate. Elena would slip through the servants' passage, plant a USB device outfitted with Louisa's infiltration software and then exit. Louisa would initiate the transfer remotely, capturing the data they needed. Still, none of them were naive. Even if Oliver was out, there would likely be staff and possibly security guards. The plan also hinged on the possibility that the footage hadn't already been wiped. When they finally concluded their strategy session, exhaustion weighed on them all. Elena tried to calm the tangle of nerves in her chest. She recalled the face of the man she once adored, now revealed to be a cold manipulator. As she walked through the silent corridors back to her room, she glanced at one of the ornate mirrors lining the walls. She saw a woman far different from the innocent dreamer who married Oliver Ashford. The reflection stared back with fierce resolve. For her unborn child's sake, Elena would face the dragon in his lair. 2 nights later, under a moon veiled by drifting clouds, Elena found herself riding in an unmarked car through winding roads leading to the Ashford estate. Henry drove, his face grim. Miguel and Louisa sat in the back, scanning various feeds on a tablet to confirm Oliver's whereabouts. They learned from a reliable source that Oliver and Vanessa were attending a lavish business banquet on the other side of town. As the estate's towering gates loomed into view, Elena's pulse thundered. Memories of the night she was pushed down those marble stairs came rushing back, threatening to unnerve her. She clutched her belly, steadying herself with thoughts of Isabella. Henry parked in a small wooded area near the estate's perimeter, out of view of security cameras. Miguel turned to Elena. "We'll wait here. You have the earpiece, right?" Elena nodded and touched her ear, where a tiny device was nestled. Louisa had designed it to provide real-time guidance. "Yes," Louisa gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll guide you through. The guard patrol schedule is every 15 minutes, so you'll have a window to slip inside. Once you place the USB in Oliver's study computer, give me the signal. I'll handle the rest." Elena took a shaky breath, pulling her hoodie over her hair. Before stepping out into the night, she murmured, "Be ready for anything." She sprinted across the lawn under cover of darkness, her heart pounding with every step. The estate loomed before her, every corner triggering memories of happier days. She reached the servants' entrance, a small, unassuming door hidden behind tall shrubbery. Fortunately, it was locked in the same manner as before. She'd once had a spare key for emergencies, which she still carried. It clicked open with minimal fuss. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit by emergency lights. Through her earpiece, Louisa whispered updates. "You have 2 guards in the northeast corridor. That's near the main foyer. You should be fine if you stick to the passage." Elena pressed herself against the wall, nerves jangling. She crept along until she reached the hidden passage door. Opening it, she slipped inside. A wave of nostalgia hit her. She used to bring Oliver late-night snacks through this route, giggling at their secret hideaway. Now, every step reminded her of betrayal. The passage led her directly to Oliver's study. Through a sliver in the door, she observed the room. It was empty, the lights turned off. She inched the door open, heart hammering. Inside, the study felt oppressive. The desk lamp illuminated the polished surface where Oliver often strategized his deals. The memory of seeing him with Vanessa flashed before her eyes, but Elena forced the thought away. Moving swiftly, she approached the computer. She plugged in Louisa's special USB and tapped her earpiece. "It's in," she whispered. Louisa's voice came back, calm but urgent. "Good. I'm initiating the transfer. Stay close for a moment so we maintain a solid connection." Elena's hands trembled as she waited, eyes flickering around the room. Everything was eerily unchanged. Oliver's leather chair, the shelves lined with books on business and philosophy, the family photos. One picture caught her attention, her wedding day photo, she and Oliver beaming. She felt a surge of pain and anger. Gently, she turned it face down. Suddenly, voices echoed from the hall. Elena's chest constricted. "Louisa!" she whispered, voice taut. Someone's coming. Louisa cursed softly in Elena's earpiece. The main gate logs show Oliver's car returning early. The banquet ended sooner than expected. Panic flared. Elena scanned the room for a hiding place. With no time to leave through the passage, she dove behind a large velvet curtain, praying the gloom would hide her silhouette. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought it might give her away. The study door swung open, footsteps, then the click of a switch. Light flooded the room, outlining shadows on the curtain. Elena held her breath, one hand protectively on her belly. "Vanessa, check the computer," Oliver's voice commanded. "I have to send that urgent email to the CFO." Elena's mind whirled. If Vanessa approached the desk, she might notice the USB. Fear twisted in Elena's gut. She was trapped mere inches away from the very woman who tried to kill her. Vanessa sighed. "All right, though I thought we were done for the night. That banquet was draining. I hate schmoozing with those arrogant investors." Elena heard the sound of keys tapping. If Vanessa glanced down, she'd spot the device. Tension coiled like a spring in Elena's chest. Through her earpiece, Louisa whispered, "I'm almost done. 10 more seconds." Oliver paced the room. "We can't afford to slack off, not with the press breathing down our necks about Elena. The last thing we need is anyone discovering what really happened." Elena felt tears sting her eyes, fury and sorrow swirling. Then the faint beep from the USB, barely audible, signaled the completion of the data transfer. "Done," Louisa hissed in her ear. "Pull out now if you can." But how? Vanessa was at the desk. Oliver was only a few steps away. For a harrowing moment, Elena contemplated revealing herself, but that would mean certain doom for her and her baby. She had to wait, every muscle tense. After a minute that felt like hours, Oliver groaned. "Let's go upstairs. I can finish this tomorrow. I'm exhausted." Vanessa let out a theatrical sigh. "Fine, I'll meet you in the bedroom. I need to grab some files from the other room." Elena heard footsteps leaving the study. A door closed. Silence. Cautiously, she peeked around the curtain. The room was empty. She dashed to the desk, yanked out the USB, and clutched it in her hand. Her pulse pounded as she retraced her steps to the hidden passage. Adrenaline propelled her through the corridors and out the servants' door. She sprinted across the lawn, ignoring the searing pain in her side, until she tumbled into the car where Henry, Miguel, and Louisa waited. Henry peeled away from the estate, headlights off, navigating by moonlight. Once they were safely on the main road, Elena let out the breath she'd been holding. She handed the USB to Louisa, who grinned triumphantly. "Now we'll see if this truly holds the proof we need," Miguel said, gripping Elena's shoulder. "You were incredibly brave." Elena leaned back, tears streaming freely. She murmured a prayer of thanks that she and her baby had survived the ordeal. But she also knew the battle was just beginning. If that footage proved Oliver's guilt, they would have to face him head-on, and he wouldn't go down without a fight. The return to Dorchester Castle felt surreal. Elena, still trembling from her narrow escape, huddled with Miguel, Louisa, Henry, and her parents around a large monitor in one of the castle's offices. Louisa connected the USB to her laptop and began decrypting the files. Minutes stretched, tense and silent. Then, as code scrolled across the screen, a video window opened. Grainy footage appeared, shot from a high angle in the Ashford Estate's grand foyer. The timestamp indicated it was from the night of the fatal confrontation. Elena's hand flew to her mouth as she watched the scene unfold. Oliver and Vanessa arguing with a visibly upset Elena on the staircase. When Elena tried to pull Oliver back, Vanessa shoved her. The footage clearly showed Elena tumbling down the steps, landing in a crumpled heap. Blood became evident on the camera feed as Elena lay motionless. Instead of offering help, Oliver glanced around frantically. Vanessa grabbed his arm, pulling him away, and they left Elena bleeding on the marble floor. Beatrice gasped, tears streaming down her face. Francisco clenched his jaw so tightly the muscles stood out on his neck. Miguel's eyes narrowed, a cold fury taking hold. Henry exhaled, relief and sorrow mingling in his expression. Elena sobbed, recalling how helpless she had felt in that moment. Louisa tapped a few more keys. This is undeniable evidence. No one can spin this. Miguel turned to Elena. We'll go straight to the authorities with this. I have a contact in the prosecutor's office, an honest one. We'll bypass local precincts and bring it directly to the top. This footage proves Vanessa assaulted you, and Oliver didn't call for help. They'll both face criminal charges. Henry nodded, a grave satisfaction in his eyes. It's time Oliver Ashford faces the consequences of his actions. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and secret negotiations. Miguel, with Henry's backing, managed to set up a meeting with a high-ranking official in law enforcement. Once the official viewed the footage, he launched a discreet investigation, preparing to issue warrants for Oliver and Vanessa's arrests. To prevent them from fleeing, the official arranged to have their passports flagged, a covert measure until the final hammer dropped. During this tense period, Elena's physical and emotional exhaustion mounted. Her parents stood by her side continuously, while Dr. Chilton cautioned her about the stress's effect on her pregnancy. Henry offered to arrange a safe home once the arrests were made, but Elena was uncertain. She still felt the castle's protective aura, yet the darkness of the memories lingered, overshadowing its fairy tale charm. Finally, the day arrived. Word reached them that the authorities were moments away from raiding Oliver's estate. Elena couldn't tear her mind away from imagining how Oliver would react upon realizing she had survived, gained powerful allies, and secured incriminating evidence. Then the call came through. Miguel's contact reported that Oliver and Vanessa had indeed been detained. The footage, combined with staff testimonies, painted a damning picture. Preliminary charges included assault, attempted manslaughter, and conspiracy to commit fraud, discovered through a separate financial investigation that followed. Oliver's house of cards was collapsing, taking Vanessa with it. Elena sank into a chair, relief coursing through her, followed swiftly by an overwhelming sadness. She had loved Oliver once. The child she carried was his. Now, he was facing a long prison sentence, and she was left to piece her life together. Tears spilled from her eyes as her parents and Henry tried to console her. "I know it hurts," Henry said quietly, "but you've reclaimed your truth. You're free from living a lie." Elena pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer. Was she free? She had endured a terrifying ordeal, had lost the illusions of a fairy tale marriage, and faced an uncertain path. Yet she felt a spark of hope. Her baby would enter a world where her mother stood strong against cruelty. That had to count for something. In the aftermath of Oliver's arrest, media outlets exploded with sensational headlines. Millionaire mogul and mistress charged in pregnant wife's assault. Shocking footage reveals betrayal and violence. Ashford Empire under siege. Elena's name circulated everywhere. Though she initially remained hidden at Dorchester Castle, her parents fielded questions from reporters steadfastly defending Elena's story. Miguel released the footage selectively, ensuring the public saw the truth. Public opinion swiftly turned against Oliver. Even his most loyal supporters distanced themselves. Prosecutors fast-tracked the case, given the violent nature of Elena's assault and the damning evidence. Vanessa tried to frame Oliver as the sole aggressor, but the footage spoke for itself. She had pushed Elena, and Oliver had left her to bleed. Both faced the weight of justice. During these tumultuous weeks, Elena retreated into the castle's sunlit gardens each morning. She communed with the blossoming roses and ancient oak trees, finding in nature a gentle reminder that life renewed itself after storms. On a serene dawn, amid soft birdsong and a gentle breeze, Elena's water broke. Panic and excitement fused into a blur. Dr. Chilton rushed to her side, aided by Rosemary and the castle's staff. With her parents gripping her hands and Henry providing additional reassurance, Elena labored for hours. At last, with a piercing cry that echoed through the castle's stony halls, Isabella Morales Ashford came into the world, a perfect, healthy baby girl. Tears of relief and joy mingled as Elena cradled her newborn. She felt an indescribable mix of awe and gratitude. This precious life had survived betrayal and violence, emerging triumphantly into a realm that now felt full of possibilities. Elena vowed silently to protect Isabella with every fiber of her being. In the weeks that followed, Elena and her daughter settled in a serene wing of Dorchester Castle, a temporary haven until legal matters concluded. While Oliver's trial loomed, Elena found solace in small joys: Isabella's giggles, painting gentle watercolors with one arm while holding the baby in the other, late-night talks with Rosemary, and strolls through the castle with Henry, who had become a steadfast friend. Eventually, the day arrived when Elena had to make a choice. With Oliver's assets frozen pending the outcome of his trial, she could not rely on any financial support from him. Through Henry's generosity, she'd been offered a modest trust to help her rebuild her life. She considered returning to Montserrat, or perhaps forging a new path in London, where she'd once studied. But in her heart, she felt she should pursue her dream of opening an art gallery and using her story to raise awareness for victims of domestic abuse. On a crisp autumn morning, Elena's parents embraced her in the courtyard, tears of pride in their eyes. She looked up at the castle's battlements, the rising sun casting golden rays against the ancient stone. It was here she had awakened from a nightmare, found justice, and started a new life. Though the journey ahead was uncharted, she felt a surge of determination. Henry approached, a gentle smile on his lips. "So, have you decided where to go from here?" Elena glanced down at Isabella, nestled in her arms. The baby's tiny hand curled around Elena's finger. "Wherever I go, it will be a new beginning for both of us." She breathed in the crisp air, letting gratitude wash over her. "My mother always told me that castles in fairy tales symbolize hope and resilience. I think she was right." She stepped into the waiting car, her parents joining her, while Miguel loaded their bags. Henry bowed his head respectfully. "Should you ever need help, the doors of Dorchester Castle will remain open to you and your family." As the car pulled away, Elena did not look back with sorrow. She left behind not a chapter of pain, but a monument to her strength. Ahead of her lay the promise of renewal, a life forged, not by illusions of a perfect fairy tale, but by the unbreakable resolve of a woman who had survived the darkest betrayal and emerged triumphant. Betrayed on marble stairs and left for dead, Elena Morales found her salvation in an unexpected castle and the unwavering support of family and new allies. She fought to unmask the lies, braving danger to secure the evidence that would expose Oliver's cruelty, and paid the price in heartbreak. Yet from these shadows emerged a fierce determination to protect her unborn child, ensuring Isabella's future would be free from fear. Now, with the castle's walls behind her and the open road ahead, Elena embodies the power of resilience over ruin. She stands as a testament that no betrayal is strong enough to destroy a spirit fueled by love and justice. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that we can triumph over the darkest storms, please consider sharing it. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected as we explore more tales of courage and perseverance in the face of adversity. Millionaire ignored his pregnant wife's cries. The mistress was his only priority. From the outside, Mark Henderson appeared to have it all: a booming real estate empire, a sprawling mansion nestled in the outskirts of Los Angeles, and a poised, loving wife expecting their first child. Neighbors whispered in admiration about how quickly Mark's star had risen, yet behind closed doors a storm brewed. Hannah's silent tears were overshadowed by Mark's obsession with his mistress's lavish demands. The tension in the Henderson household simmered like a kettle about to explode. Today, we delve into a gripping, real-life drama where wealth collides with betrayal and one woman's cry for help is brutally ignored. Mark Henderson's journey from a humble upbringing in San Diego to the pinnacle of Los Angeles' elite was nothing short of remarkable. Born to a single mother, Darlene Henderson, he spent most of his childhood in a cramped apartment that overlooked a noisy freeway. He often watched sports cars whiz by, daydreaming about the life he wished he could live. Yet Mark's ambitions were bigger than the squealing brakes and dusty windows that clouded his early years. Every morning, he rose before the sun to deliver newspapers and save every penny. By night, he devoured books on entrepreneurship and real estate. In high school, Mark befriended a bright, imaginative girl named Hannah Morgan. Though she hailed from a slightly more stable home environment, Hannah felt a deep connection to Mark's determination. Their bond formed slowly through late-night phone calls where they exchanged life stories and grand ambitions. She saw in him a fire so intense it both intrigued and intimidated her. He saw in her a steady source of warmth, a calm in his own swirling storm of ambition. Yet, despite their close friendship, they never quite crossed the line into romance during those teenage years. After high school, Mark attended a local community college, juggling multiple part-time jobs to fund his education. Hannah, on the other hand, pursued a degree in journalism at a state university. Their paths diverged but never fully separated. They kept in touch through sporadic emails and phone calls, updating each other on life's developments, her budding interest in investigative reporting, his fascination with flipping rundown properties and renting them out for profit. It was in his final year of college that Mark stumbled upon what would become his lifelong obsession: real estate investment. He interned with a small firm run by a shrewd but kind-hearted broker named Alan Burrows. Under Alan's mentorship, Mark learned the intricacies of property valuation, market trends, and negotiation tactics. Immediately after graduation, Mark set his sights on distressed properties in neighborhoods he believed were on the verge of gentrification. He borrowed money from friends and a few of Alan's acquaintances to make his first purchase, a dilapidated house in East Los Angeles. That first venture brought Mark a modest profit, but more importantly, it validated his instincts. Through grueling hours and endless research, he honed his strategy, scouring the city for hidden gems with potential. With each successful flip, his reputation grew. Investors saw in him an unrelenting drive and an uncanny ability to foresee development hotspots. By the time he turned 28, Mark had amassed a modest portfolio. By 30, he was a millionaire several times over, known in industry circles for his sharp mind, ironclad work ethic, and appetite for risk. During that same period, Hannah built her career in journalism. She worked for a local paper, covering community events and minor political scandals, and soon developed a knack for digging deeper than most. Her curiosity sometimes got her into trouble, but it also won her awards. Despite her success, life felt strangely incomplete. She dated a few men, but none sparked the same sense of fervor she'd felt in Mark's presence. And so, one night, when an unexpected invitation arrived for a gala celebrating local entrepreneurs, she accepted without a second thought. The invitation happened to come from Mark Henderson, who was being honored for his contributions to affordable housing in a low-income neighborhood. At that gala, set in a luxurious hotel ballroom in downtown Los Angeles, their reunion was electric. Mark recognized her instantly, despite the elegant dress and poised demeanor she now carried with confidence. Hannah hardly recognized the suave, tailored suit wearing man shaking hands with city officials and real estate moguls. Their eyes met across the room, and it was as though years of distance melted in a single glance. They found each other after the ceremony, huddling in a quiet corner with glasses of champagne, catching up on all they had missed. They spoke of childhood memories, their separate journeys, and their renewed ambitions. Mark couldn't help but admire Hannah's unwavering sense of justice, her empathy, and her refusal to compromise on integrity in her reporting. Hannah was awed by his maturity and his ability to wield considerable influence without losing the essence of who he was, that tenacious boy from San Diego who delivered newspapers at dawn. One meeting led to another, which led to a late-night coffee date and a long stroll by the Santa Monica Pier. Mark confessed that the path to success was lonely, filled with uncertain partnerships and the ever-looming fear of financial ruin if a deal went wrong. Hannah shared her frustrations with corruption stories being buried by editors too afraid to challenge powerful figures. As they walked under the moonlit sky, the closeness they once felt in high school grew more potent. They connected on a deeper level, no longer as naive teenagers, but as adults who had faced life's complexities and emerged stronger. It did not take long for them to officially become a couple. Their circle of friends whispered that the union of Mark and Hannah felt like destiny. Hannah's parents, Laura and Joseph Morgan, were ecstatic to see their daughter with a man so devoted to his passions, yet so attentive to her every word. Mark's mother, Darlene, though proud of her son's achievements, felt an even greater pride seeing him choose a partner who stood by him with unwavering resolve. Their courtship was short but intense. Mark, ever the grand gesture type, proposed to Hannah at the top of the Griffith Observatory. It was a private moment beneath the stars, the city lights glittering below them as Mark slipped a delicate diamond ring onto her finger. She said yes, tears streaming down her cheeks, and their embrace was a promise of a future built on trust, mutual respect, and a love rooted in shared history. Their wedding took place on a warm summer afternoon in the backyard of a friend's estate in Malibu. It was an intimate affair, attended mostly by close family, long-time friends, and a handful of Mark's business associates. Hannah wore a simple yet elegant gown, carrying a bouquet of white roses that contrasted beautifully with her dark hair. Mark looked every bit the confident groom, but his voice quivered with emotion as he recited his vows. He promised to love and protect Hannah, to value her spirit and her independence, and to be there for her in moments of triumph and despair. For a time, life was beautiful. They settled into a renovated Spanish-style villa in the rolling hills of Los Feliz. Hannah continued her journalism career, while Mark expanded his real estate empire. Their combined schedules were demanding, but they made time for each other, shared breakfasts where they discussed their dreams, quiet evenings watching documentaries, spontaneous weekend getaways to quiet coastal towns. But with success came pressure. As Mark's wealth ballooned, he found himself juggling an ever-growing list of clients, partners, and high-stake deals. Every morning seemed to arrive with an urgent phone call from an investor demanding progress updates. Every evening brought a new networking event. Hannah, committed to ethical reporting, ran into challenges at work whenever her stories stepped on the toes of influential individuals. Despite their busy lives, they remained each other's anchors, or so Hannah believed. Then came the news that would change everything. Hannah was pregnant. She had discovered it on a random Tuesday afternoon after feeling unusually nauseous. A test confirmed it, and she rushed to Mark's office with trembling excitement. Mark's reaction was as elated as she'd dreamed. He lifted her off her feet in a swirl of genuine joy. That evening, they celebrated privately with a homemade dinner and a promise to raise their child in a household brimming with love. But life has a strange way of twisting joy into sorrow when hidden cracks begin to widen. The cracks in Mark's life were subtle at first. Missed dinners, a vague restlessness in his eyes, business trips that seemed more frequent than ever. Hannah tried to be understanding. His career was intense, and she believed that his dedication provided them with a comfortable life. Yet, a small seed of doubt took root in her mind when she found a lipstick-stained handkerchief in his jacket pocket. It was not hers. She tried confronting him gently, but Mark dismissed it with a laugh, attributing it to an overly friendly client who had hugged him at a charity event. He had forgotten to get it cleaned, he claimed, offering a quick apology before rushing to another meeting. Still, Hannah felt uneasy. She knew Mark's ambitious nature was part of what made him who he was, but she also sensed a shift. He was more guarded with his phone, more prone to irritability, and sometimes she caught a hint of perfume on his suits that smelled nothing like her own. When Hannah was about 4 months along, she began noticing explicit changes in Mark's schedule. Late-night phone calls, abrupt outings he refused to explain, and an unsettling coldness that settled between them. At first, Hannah blamed pregnancy hormones for her heightened sensitivity, but deep down, she suspected there was more at play. Her suspicions were confirmed one afternoon when Mark left for a business meeting and inadvertently forgot his phone in the car. It buzzed incessantly, flashing messages from a contact labeled only with the initials LS. Hannah's heart pounded as she read the words displayed on the lock screen. "Missing you already. Can't wait to see you again tonight." Though Mark had never given her his passcode, the message alone was enough to shatter her remaining illusions. Stricken with disbelief, Hannah wrestled with whether to confront him directly. She knew Mark was proud, prone to denial if cornered without incontrovertible evidence. Perhaps the best approach was to follow her journalistic instincts, gather facts, confirm them, and then decide how to act. But this was her marriage, her unborn child's father. Could she risk an open confrontation based on a single text? In the weeks that followed, Hannah became a detective in her own home. She noted Mark's comings and goings, the phone calls he received, the changes in his demeanor. Each new clue drove a deeper wedge of pain into her heart, but she kept her suspicions hidden behind forced smiles and polite conversation. She feared that if she confronted him without ironclad proof, it might destroy the fragile balance they still maintained. Her fears were not unfounded. Mark was indeed entangled in an affair. Late-night trysts at luxury hotels, secret dinners at candlelit restaurants where he assumed no one would recognize him, these became the new routine for a man once defined by loyalty and grit. The mistress in question was a woman named Lillian Stewart, a striking former model with connections to Hollywood's elite. Lillian had her own ambitions, launching a high-end fashion line, and she saw in Mark both a romantic partner and a financial patron who could help her achieve her dreams. Mark, seduced by her allure and perhaps by the novelty of a life that was free from the emotional weights of domestic life, found himself falling deeper into Lillian's web. Meanwhile, Hannah navigated her pregnancy with an ever-present ache in her chest. She'd smile when her mother called, offering updates on nursery preparations and baby name ideas. She'd put on a brave face at her obstetrician visits, feigning normalcy as the doctor showed her the baby's healthy heartbeat on the ultrasound. But inside, her suspicions thrummed like a constant drumbeat. Each lie Mark told, each elusive phone call was another blow to the marriage she cherished. As the weeks turned into months, The tension became too thick to ignore. Hannah knew she needed definitive proof before she confronted Mark. She employed the help of a private investigator, a discreet man named Peter Caldwell, someone she'd met once while researching a corruption story. Peter was reluctant at first, wary of personal entanglements, but Hannah's desperation along with a substantial fee convinced him to take the case. Peter set to work, trailing Mark discreetly for several weeks. Photographs emerged, Mark exiting an upscale boutique in Beverly Hills with Lillian on his arm, sharing a private laugh. Mark's car parked outside Lillian's high-rise condo, not just once, but multiple times. Receipts for expensive gifts, dinners, and spa appointments made out to Lillian. Hannah spent many sleepless nights poring over Peter's reports, her tears staining the printed pages. Each piece of evidence felt like a stab, not just to her heart, but to the dream of a stable family she had so dearly wanted for her child. And yet, every time Hannah thought about confronting Mark, her resolve wavered. She was 6 months pregnant now, her belly round with the promise of new life. She still remembered their wedding vows, the nights they laughed and made plans for the future, the sweet way he once caressed her hair when she fell ill. Was that all gone? Reduced to ashes by the spark of infidelity? The day Hannah decided to confront Mark was the day she found out the sex of their baby, a little boy. She had gone to the doctor alone, as Mark claimed to be tied up in urgent meetings. Looking at the ultrasound, she felt both exhilaration and a profound sadness. That night, while waiting for Mark to come home, she laid out the photographs on their dining room table. She rehearsed her speech in her mind, bracing herself for his reaction, for the inevitable unraveling of their life together. But Mark never showed up. The hours passed, the food she prepared grew cold, and her phone calls went straight to voicemail. It was nearly midnight when Mark finally stepped through the door. He looked exhausted, and though he tried to hide it, the lingering scent of another woman's perfume clung to his clothes. Hannah's eyes burned with tears, but she remained calm. "Sit down," she said, her voice trembling only slightly. Mark glanced at the array of photographs spread before him. A flicker of panic crossed his face. For a moment, Hannah hoped he might break down, offer a tearful confession, beg for forgiveness. Instead, he looked away, jaw set in defiance. "Where did you get these?" he asked coldly, ignoring the raw betrayal in her eyes. "Does it matter?" she replied, her voice strangled by heartbreak. "I know everything, Mark. I know about Lillian Stewart. I know about the late nights, the trips, the gifts. You can't lie to me anymore." Silence settled between them, heavy as a concrete wall. Finally, Mark spoke. "It's not what it looks like," he began, but even he seemed unsure of his own words. Hannah waited, but he offered no better explanation. "How could you do this? I'm your wife. We're having a child, a son." Her voice cracked, tears welling up. "I trusted you. I believed in us." Mark sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands for a moment before looking up at her. "I never meant for this to happen," he whispered, voice thick with something that could have been remorse or simply exhaustion. "Lillian and I. It was just a distraction. I'm under so much pressure. Hannah, this new development deal is worth millions, and investors keep pushing." I felt like I was suffocating. I needed an escape. Hannah's anger flared, momentarily eclipsing her sorrow. "So you escaped by cheating? You betrayed everything we built, Mark. Our marriage, our family, our dreams. You think that's an excuse?" He stood, attempting to move closer to her, but she recoiled. "Don't," she hissed. "Don't touch me. Not after what you've done." His features hardened, perhaps a defense against her rejection. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he repeated, this time with more agitation. "And you're always buried in your work, investigating this or that. We barely even talk anymore." Hannah felt her heart break anew. "So that justifies an affair? I'm pregnant with your child, Mark. I've been shouldering the changes in my body, the emotional turmoil, trying to keep our lives intact while you're off with another woman." Mark stared at her, guilt and frustration warring in his expression. He tried to form words, but none came. Eventually he grabbed his jacket and phone, muttering something about needing space. Hannah stood alone in the living room, tears streaming down her cheeks as the door slammed shut. That night, she cried herself to sleep, alone for the first time in their marriage. The house felt haunted by his absence, every hallway echoing with memories of happier times. She knew that the confrontation was only the beginning of a crisis that threatened to consume them both. If Hannah thought the worst had passed, she was mistaken. Mark's affair would soon escalate into a full-blown scandal, one that would shake not just their marriage but his entire empire, putting everything and everyone they cared about at risk. The morning after their confrontation, Hannah awoke to an empty bed and an eerily quiet house. She was no stranger to Mark's occasional overnight absences. He often traveled for deals or claimed to crash at his office when negotiations ran late, but this time the silence felt unbearably heavy. When she finally mustered the courage to check her phone, there was no message from him. The loneliness pressed on her chest like a lead weight. She spent the day in a haze, mechanically going through the motions of daily life, making breakfast, attempting to read the latest investigative pieces from her colleagues, folding tiny baby clothes she had recently purchased. Everything reminded her of the child growing inside her, the child who would soon enter a household in shambles if things didn't change. Late afternoon brought a surprise visitor. Darlene, Mark's mother, showed up at the door with a casserole dish and a worried expression. "I got the sense something was wrong," Darlene explained softly. "Mark called me, said he needed some space." "That's not like him. Where is he?" Hannah's composure cracked, and the tears she'd been holding back came rushing forth. She motioned for Darlene to come inside, then told her the whole story, the affair, the nights alone, the photographs, Mark's pitiful excuses. Throughout her tale, Darlene remained silent, her eyes filled with both sorrow and anger. When Hannah finished, Darlene placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said gently. "I never imagined my son would do something so reckless, especially now." Hannah nodded, struggling to steady her breath. She appreciated Darlene's empathy, but she couldn't ignore the bitter reality. Mark had betrayed her trust. No casserole dish or comforting words could erase that. Still, she let Darlene's presence soothe her. They talked for hours, discussing possible ways to reach Mark, to convince him to come home and face the consequences of his actions. Darlene offered to call him, but Hannah declined. "He'll only see it as meddling," she said. "I need him to come back on his own terms, ready to talk." That night, Hannah tried once more to call Mark, but again it went straight to voicemail. Exhausted, she retreated to bed. She tossed and turned, her mind spiraling with dark thoughts. Had he chosen Lillian over her for good? Would she end up raising this child alone? Meanwhile, Mark was indeed with Lillian, holed up in a penthouse suite in downtown Los Angeles. The suite boasted floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of the city, a city that Mark had once navigated with youthful determination, now a glittering testament to his financial success. But despite the lavish setting, Mark felt restless, even anxious. Lillian lounged on the plush couch, flipping through a magazine filled with designer dresses, occasionally showing him a piece she liked. "You think I could pull this off for my line's launch party?" she asked, her tone light, almost dismissive of the emotional turmoil Mark was steeped in. He forced a half smile. "Sure, it looks great," he said, though he couldn't muster any real enthusiasm. His mind was consumed with the image of Hannah's tear-filled eyes, the pain etched across her face, and the photographs that laid bare his betrayal. Guilt knotted his stomach. "Mark," Lillian said, noticing his distraction, "I need you present. You're barely here." Is this about that phone call from your mother? He sighed, rubbing his temples. It's about everything, he admitted. I messed up, Lillian. The first know that. Hannah's pregnant 6 months now, and I've all but deserted her. She set the magazine aside and moved closer, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. You're too hard on yourself, she whispered, leaning in. We have something special. I'm not asking you to abandon your responsibilities, but you can't keep torturing yourself like this. Maybe it's best you finalize things with Hannah. You have your life, and I have mine, but we can create something together. His jaw clenched. Deep down, Mark knew that every minute he spent in Lillian's company was a minute further from redemption with Hannah. Yet he felt entangled, drawn in by Lillian's worldliness, her understanding of the pressures that came with high-stakes business. Or at least, she claimed to understand. Hannah represented home, comfort, and conscience, while Lillian offered escape, excitement, and a sense of reckless freedom he hadn't felt in years. The duality tore him apart. In the days that followed, Mark dove headfirst into his work as though to drown out the chaos of his personal life. Meetings, conference calls, business lunches, he welcomed each distraction. He couldn't bear to face Hannah, nor could he bring himself to cut ties with Lillian. Instead, he vacillated between guilt and denial, telling himself he would figure it all out once the pressure from his pending development deal eased. The deal in question was massive, a sprawling complex of luxury condominiums near the revitalized downtown area. Investors from New York and Dubai had poured millions into the project. The city's planning commission was watching closely, as were local activists concerned about the displacement of lower-income residents. Mark found himself in the crosshairs of both corporate allies and social critics, a precarious position that he felt required his undivided attention. Yet, ironically, he was anything but fully focused. His mind constantly drifted to the personal storm he had created. Hannah, on the other hand, found herself growing more determined each day. She realized that her silence only enabled Mark's avoidance. So she decided to investigate the final piece of the puzzle, the nature of Lillian's relationship with Mark beyond mere physical attraction. What did Lillian stand to gain financially? Was she simply a woman who had fallen for a married man, or did she have ulterior motives? Using her journalistic savvy, Hannah dug into Lillian's background. She discovered that Lillian had a history of relationships with affluent men. There were rumors of questionable financial transactions, whispers of blackmail, and a string of ex-boyfriends who had quietly paid hefty sums to keep certain details under wraps. Hannah wasn't entirely surprised. Mark had always been a prime target for those seeking wealth or influence. But the extent of Lillian's alleged manipulation made her fear for her husband's business as well as their personal lives. One evening, determined to confront the situation head-on, Hannah drove to the downtown penthouse where Mark had been staying with Lillian. Peter Caldwell, the private investigator, had supplied her with the address. Hannah's heart pounded as she stood outside the imposing glass structure. The doorman asked if she had an appointment. She hesitated only a moment before stating confidently, "I'm Mark Henderson's wife. He's expecting me." The doorman, clearly familiar with Mark, stepped aside without further questions. She rode the elevator up to the 52nd floor, each ding of the doors amplifying her anxiety. When she reached the penthouse, she found the door slightly ajar. Stepping inside, she heard raised voices from the next room. "Damn it, Lillian," Mark's voice thundered. "I said I'd handle it. Why are you pushing me like this?" Hannah's heart lurched at the raw frustration in his tone. She carefully moved closer, peeking around the corner. Lillian stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed, her posture rigid. "I'm pushing you because I've invested my own money in this, Mark. I'm launching my line in just a month, and your support is crucial. Without you, I can't secure the partnerships I need." Mark raked a hand through his hair. I told you I'd invest. What more do you want? She turned, fire in her eyes. I want you to invest in me the way you invest in your deals, no half measures. And I want you to break it off with Hannah once and for all. I'm tired of hiding. The conversation stunned Hannah, who realized that Mark was financially backing Lillian's fashion line. She also realized that Lillian viewed her as an obstacle to be removed. Anger flared, but she forced herself to remain calm. She needed to understand the full extent of what was happening. I'm not discussing Hannah with you right now, Mark said. She's pregnant with my child. This is complicated. It's only complicated because you won't make a decision, Lillian snapped. I can't afford your indecision. You either commit to me or let me move on. And if I move on, I'm taking what you promised with me. Mark's shoulders sagged in exasperation. Why are you threatening me? This was supposed to be a partnership. That partnership hinges on you upholding your end. If you can't, I have no problem finding another investor. But I'd prefer not to, Lillian said, her tone softer now, almost seductive. She approached Mark, resting a hand on his shoulder. I want this to work, Mark, but I need to know where we stand. Hannah couldn't listen anymore. She stepped fully into the room, her presence a sharp interruption that made both of them whirl around. The shock on Mark's face was immediate. Lillian stiffened, her eyes narrowing as she scanned Hannah's pregnant form. Well, if it isn't the devoted wife, Lillian said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but words failed him. Hannah felt her hands tremble, her heart pounding, but she steadied herself. I came to speak to my husband, she said, her voice surprisingly resolute. Alone, Lillian scoffed, turning to Mark. Your call, she said. He nodded, still too stunned to form a sentence. As Lillian walked out, she brushed past Hannah, casting a scornful glance at her belly. Once she was gone, Hannah stood facing Mark in the lavishly furnished living area. The city lights twinkled behind him, a stark contrast to the darkness that had crept into their marriage. We need to talk, she said quietly. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know, she drew a shaky breath. Why, Mark? Why her? Why now? I thought we were building a life together. We're having a son. Was all of that meaningless to you? Mark sank onto a nearby sofa, burying his face in his hands. It wasn't meaningless, he murmured. I never wanted to hurt you. I got lost. The business, the stress, everything. Lillian was exciting. She offered me a chance to forget my responsibilities for a while. Hannah felt tears prickle her eyes, but she blinked them back. Forget your responsibilities? That includes me and our baby? Don't you realize how selfish that sounds? He nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek. I know. I've messed up so badly, but it's not just about the affair. Lillian and I invested in her line. It's a significant amount, and it's tied to the success of my development deal. If I pull out now, I'll lose everything I've put in. She might even retaliate, cause problems for my investors. It could ruin me financially. An incredulous laugh escaped Hannah. So this is about money too. You risked our marriage for a questionable business deal. He shook his head. No, I risked our marriage because I was foolish and weak. The money part just makes it all more complicated. Hannah, I'm in too deep. I don't know how to fix this. She wanted to rail at him, to scream and cry and unleash all her pent-up fury. But she also realized that Mark was, in some twisted way, a victim of his own ambition and Lillian's manipulations. That didn't excuse him, but it painted a picture of a man who'd lost his moral compass in the face of overwhelming pressure. Taking a seat across from him, Hannah's voice trembled. What about our child? What happens when he's born? Mark lifted his head, eyes rimmed with regret. I want to be there for him, and for you if you'll let me. I just don't know how to extricate myself from Lillian without unleashing a whole new set of problems. She stared at him, silent for a long moment. "Are you prepared to be a father, Mark?" Being a father means putting someone else's needs before your own. It means sacrificing, making hard choices. "Can you do that?" He clenched his jaw, inhaling shakily. "I want to try. I want to fix this. But I need time to sort out the financial ramifications, to make sure Lillian doesn't retaliate." Hannah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Here she was, 6 months pregnant, standing in a penthouse that reeked of betrayal, listening to her husband talk about how he might salvage their life while protecting his money. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling a gentle kick, a reminder that a little life depended on her. She stood up, her posture determined. "I won't beg you to come home, but if you care about me, about our child, you'll find a way to leave Lillian behind, deal or no deal. Otherwise, don't bother showing up at the hospital when I give birth." Tears pooled in Mark's eyes. "Hannah, wait." She held up a hand. "I'm done waiting for you, Mark. The clock is ticking. Our son will be here soon, and I refuse to bring him into a world where his father is torn between his wife and his mistress. You have a choice. Be the man I married, or walk away." With that, she turned and walked out, ignoring his pleas for her to come back. The elevator ride down felt endless, her mind a tumult of conflicting emotions. She still loved Mark. She didn't know how to stop, but she also recognized that love alone couldn't mend the chasm he had created. Over the next week, Mark tried calling Hannah multiple times a day. Initially, she didn't answer, needing space to process everything. When she finally did pick up, she found him contrite, apologizing profusely, assuring her that he was taking steps to disentangle himself from Lillian. Yet, he couldn't give her a clear timeline, nor could he promise that the fallout wouldn't be severe. He spoke of high-stake negotiations with Lillian's lawyers, and she wondered how it had escalated so quickly. The woman was more than a casual mistress. She was a business partner wielding real power over Mark. During this time, Hannah found solace in unlikely places. She rekindled friendships that had faded amid her busy schedule. She invited her parents to stay with her for a few days, grateful for their unwavering support. Laura Morgan rubbed Hannah's feet and told her stories about the joys and challenges of motherhood, while Joseph Morgan assured her that, no matter what happened with Mark, they would stand by her. Yet the emotional toll took a physical toll as well. Hannah began experiencing elevated blood pressure, and her obstetrician ordered her to rest more. The stress wasn't good for the baby, the doctor warned, and Hannah needed to prioritize her health. One evening, as she lay in bed, her phone pinged with a text message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. The message read, "You think you're so righteous, but Mark isn't the saint you imagine. If you try to take him away from me completely, you'll regret it. L." Fear coursed through her veins. Lillian had her number. Lillian was threatening her, albeit indirectly. Hannah's resolve only hardened. If Mark didn't cut ties with this woman soon, the situation would escalate beyond repair. Meanwhile, Mark found himself fighting battles on multiple fronts. Lillian threatened to sue him for breach of contract if he withdrew his investment. She claimed she'd revealed damaging information to the press, which could scuttle Mark's development deal and tarnish his reputation. Investors caught wind of the turmoil and began to grow skittish. Mark's phone rang off the hook, with anxious partners demanding explanations. Desperate, Mark sought legal advice from a trusted attorney, Robert Calhoun, who had guided him through many of his real estate ventures. Robert was appalled by Mark's tangled personal and financial affairs. "You've given this woman an incredible amount of leverage," Robert said grimly, sifting through documents that outline the investments. "She could do real damage if she goes public. And from the looks of it, she's prepared to." Mark sighed, burying his face in his hands. "I just want out. I want to be with my wife, my child, and put this behind me." Robert closed the folder with a soft thud. Then be prepared to negotiate. It might cost you a significant sum. She'll want a buyout. Hush money. Something. Are you willing to pay that price? Mark hesitated. The sum Lillian might demand could put a serious dent in his fortune, not to mention the potential blow to his credibility if investors discovered the scandal behind the scenes. But as he thought of Hannah, her tear-streaked face, her pregnant belly, the love he still felt, he knew he had no other choice. "I'll pay whatever I have to," Mark finally said. "I can't lose Hannah." Negotiations commenced swiftly. Robert Calhoun reached out to Lillian's legal team, offering a substantial settlement in exchange for her silent withdrawal from both the business partnership and Mark's personal life. Lillian played hardball, demanding an even higher figure, along with Mark's guarantee that he wouldn't sabotage her fledgling fashion line. Days turned into nights of tense back and forth. Meanwhile, Hannah remained cautious, refusing to meet Mark in person until he assured her the deal was in motion. At times, she questioned whether Mark's motivations were purely financial. Could a man who truly loved her and their unborn child have gotten them into such a predicament to begin with? Still, she wanted to believe in redemption. If Mark could truly sever ties with Lillian, perhaps they could rebuild, albeit slowly and painfully. She recognized that forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but for the sake of their child, she was willing to try, provided Mark demonstrated genuine remorse and commitment. However, fate threw another curveball. On a humid afternoon, as Hannah tried to rest, she received a frantic call from an unknown number. When she answered, she heard a voice trembling with urgency, one of Mark's junior associates. "Miss S. Henderson? Please, you have to come to Mark's office. Something bad has happened. Panic overtook her." She demanded an explanation, but the associate was too frazzled to provide details, only repeating that Mark needed her immediately. Ignoring the doctor's advice to stay calm, Hannah rushed out, hailing a taxi to Mark's corporate headquarters. Her mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Had Lillian made good on her threats? Had Mark's investors pulled out at the last minute, triggering a meltdown? Or worse, had Mark been hurt? When the taxi pulled up to the towering glass building, Hannah's anxiety soared. She hurried inside, ignoring the curious stares of employees who recognized her. She was directed to Mark's private office on the top floor, where she found him slumped in a chair, looking as if he hadn't slept in days. Papers were strewn across his desk, his hair disheveled and his normally confident demeanor replaced by a haunted expression. "What happened?" she asked, breathless. "Are you okay?" He glanced up, eyes brimming with relief at her presence. "Hannah," he murmured. God, I'm sorry." Her gaze flicked to the documents scattered about. They appeared to be legal papers, statements of accounts, and a flurry of emails. "What's going on?" Mark rubbed his temples, exhaling a shaky breath. "Lillian pulled out of the negotiations. She's threatening to expose everything. She has evidence, pictures, texts, bank transfers that could ruin my reputation and sabotage my deals. She's demanding double what we originally offered, plus a piece of future profits from my real estate ventures." Hannah's stomach churned. "Why would she do that? Does she think you'll cave?" His laughter was hollow. "She knows I might. Too much is at stake, my business, the livelihoods of my employees, our future. If she goes public, I could lose hundreds of millions. The investors would pull out. The city commission might revoke my permits. Everything could collapse." Hannah felt her knees weaken. She rested a hand on Mark's desk to steady herself. "So what are you going to do?" He shook his head, despair etched across his face. "I don't know. I've already offered more money than I ever imagined. She wants a piece of me forever, Hannah. She wants to be tethered to my success, to milk it for all it's worth. And if I don't comply, she'll drag my name through the mud." A tense silence filled the office. Hannah thought of the text message she had received from Lillian, the venomous threat hidden within. She realized, with growing dread, that this woman had meticulously planned every step, using Mark's vulnerabilities to ensnare him. Now, unless he agreed to her extortion, she would unleash havoc on his life. "What do you want me to do?" Hannah asked quietly, his eyes flickered with desperation. "I don't know. I need you. I need to know that, no matter what happens, you'll stand by me. I'm terrified of losing you." Hannah's heart squeezed at the genuine fear in his voice. Despite everything, she still loved him, still believed that the man she married was buried somewhere under these layers of mistakes. But trust was fragile, and his affair had shattered it. "We're not okay, Mark," she said, voice tinged with sorrow. "I can't promise that we will be. You betrayed me. You betrayed our child. The only reason I'm even here is because I hoped you could fix this before it destroys all of us." He looked like he wanted to reach for her, to hold her. She stiffened, unsure if she could accept the comfort of his touch. Instead, she turned away, her gaze falling on a framed photo of them from their wedding day, displayed on his desk. Their faces shone with happiness, the future bright and unblemished by deceit. She wondered if they could ever recapture even a fraction of that bliss. "Tell me what to do," he pleaded. "Should I pay her? Should I let it all come crashing down and start over?" She sighed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the decision. "You can't let her own you forever, Mark. If you give in to her demands now, what's to stop her from asking for more later? But if you don't pay her, you risk everything. Either way, you need to make a choice. And you need to be ready to face the consequences." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'll talk to Robert again, see if there's a way to legally restrict her from making further claims after a settlement. Maybe we can salvage something." Hannah squeezed her eyes shut, trying to quell the wave of nausea and anxiety that threatened to overtake her. She felt a sudden, sharp twinge in her abdomen, a reminder of the physical toll this ordeal was taking. "I need to leave," she whispered. "I'm not feeling well." Mark shot up from his chair, concern etched across his face. "Are you okay? Let me drive you home?" She shook her head. "No, I'll be fine. I just need rest." "Sort this out, Mark, or we risk losing more than just money." With that, she turned and walked away, ignoring the worried stares of the staff. Outside, the late afternoon sun seemed too bright, the city too loud. She climbed into a waiting taxi and leaned back against the seat, cradling her belly. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she realized the grim reality. Even if Mark managed to extricate himself from Lillian's clutches, their marriage might never be the same. Back in his office, Mark sank into his chair, staring blankly at the legal papers. His phone rang investors, no doubt, or maybe Robert with updates. He let it go to voicemail. All he could think of was the look of pain in Hannah's eyes, a reflection of the turmoil he had brought into her life. Swallowing the lump in his throat, he resolved that he would do anything, pay any price to free himself from Lillian's grasp, if only to salvage a chance at redemption with his wife and unborn child. The question that lingered, however, was whether it was already too late. A week later, tensions reached a breaking point. Lillian's legal team issued an ultimatum: pay the inflated settlement or brace for a damaging public scandal. Mark, cornered, agreed to the payout, but he demanded a strict non-disclosure agreement that prohibited Lillian from demanding more money or revealing their affair in any form. Stung by the threat of potential lawsuits, she finally relented. The transaction was swift and brutal. In a single wire transfer, Mark forfeited a hefty portion of his fortune, effectively buying back his freedom. Investors were kept in the dark about the true reason behind the large withdrawal, believing instead that it was tied to strategic real estate moves. Robert Calhoun ensured that every legal document was airtight, leaving Lillian with no further leverage. With the crisis contained, Mark approached Hannah with a mixture of relief and dread. She listened to his confession about the settlement, her expression weary. Though she was glad the immediate threat had passed, her trust remained shattered. Healing would require time, therapy, and a deep recommitment to their vows. Days before their son's birth, Mark moved back into the Los Feliz home. Hannah allowed him a corner of the guest room, uncertain if she could share a marital bed with him yet. He spent every spare moment caring for her, driving her to doctor's appointments, and even painting the nursery walls a soft shade of blue. Little by little, he tried to show her through actions rather than empty promises that he was ready to change. When labor pains finally came, Mark stood by Hannah's side, holding her hand through every contraction. Their son, whom they named Lucas Morgan Henderson, arrived healthy and wailing. In that moment, as tears of joy and relief coursed down their cheeks, Mark and Hannah shared a fleeting sense of unity. They were parents now, bound by a love far greater than themselves. In the weeks that followed, Mark continued to prove his devotion. Late-night feedings, diaper changes, lullabies, he embraced these tasks without complaint. Hannah, emotionally and physically exhausted, found solace in his consistency. Though the wounds of betrayal hadn't fully healed, the presence of their newborn son served as a reminder of what they stood to gain by forging a new path together. Slowly, they agreed to couples therapy, determined to confront the ugliness of the past and rebuild on a foundation of honesty. Mark cut all remaining ties with Lillian, focusing instead on repairing the damage within his own home. As the months passed, Hannah saw glimpses of the man she once fell in love with, driven yet humble, proud yet willing to admit his faults. Their marriage remained a work in progress. Nightmares of Lillian's threats still haunted Hannah, and Mark wrestled with guilt over his failures. But through it all, they leaned on each other, fueled by the tiny heartbeat that had come into their lives and demanded they fight for a better tomorrow. And for now, that was enough. Surviving heartbreak and betrayal is never simple. Yet Mark and Hannah's story reminds us that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal when both parties commit to rebuilding trust. If you found yourself moved by their tumultuous journey, consider how compassion and genuine accountability can transform relationships hanging by a thread. Real-life stories like this underscore the complexity of human choices and the price we pay for them. We invite you to reflect on this dramatic tale. Could you forgive such a betrayal? What sacrifices would you make for the people you love most? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you want more narratives that pull back the curtain on life's most challenging moments, be sure to like this video, share it with friends who love drama, and subscribe to our channel. Your support empowers us to continue exploring stories that captivate, inspire, and teach hard-won lessons.